coming through.
Day, and welcome to another adventure with the Pickleball Show here with Curtis Reese. And we have our first guest, who is I've known a long time, and a mentor and friend of mine. His name is Mr. Craig Bell from Bent Tree Country Club. He is the Director of Racquet Sports now. Oh, how long have you been there now, Craig?
At Bent Tree, a little over 25 years. Seems like 25 minutes, but 25 years. And then some change. Well,
if memory serves me right, you were at the University Club, which was explained to our viewers. Hopefully some of you viewers are going to remember that place. I remember it. Where was it at again?
Right above Macy's department store in the Galleria.
Okay.
So we occupied about 100,000 square feet of the Galleria.
Oh,
if you travel down the tollway or up the tollway, you look back towards the Galleria, and you see the lights that say Macy's. That's the old University Club.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there were 6 tennis courts on the 4th floor. 5th floor was men's locker room, basically, and some fitness. And then 6th floor was fine dining. So we were really kind of an executive workout club with tennis, fitness, racquetball. There's some racquetball courts there as well. So it was a great place.
Any pickleball courts?
Not at that point.
I'm just
Even though pickleball was around, pickleball was around, but it certainly wasn't in my wheelhouse at that point.
One of many things that this man does is USPTA, United States Professional Tennis Association. He's also with the IPTPA, which is the International Pickleball Teaching Professional Association. And what else are you in with regards to your certifications, like pickleball?
Yep. I do a lot of things. Let's put it that. I dabble in a lot of things that interest me. So, tennis and pickleball probably right now. I wouldn't say I'm good at anything else, at the moment.
I disagree with that.
But I have a lot of interest. My mind goes a lot of different places that we can talk about here in the future.
But we've got some stuff down here. Well, some of the things he also does as well is he has At the Net podcast on Facebook and Instagram. Is that right, IGTV?
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all the social media sites the kids find popular today. Right. That's why I tell everybody. That's in my opening. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor Breaker, Radio Public, Spotify. I've said that 120 times, so I kind of know my intro pretty well. But I just say where the kids find popular the sites.
Well, speaking of that, let's talk about family. Tell us a little bit about your family, if we could ask about them.
Yes. Well, thanks. And first off, thank you for inviting me to be the honorary first guest of the Pickleball Show. I'm very flattered that you thought of me in this capacity. So thank you, Curtis, for this opportunity. I've been married to my wife, Cindy, for almost 40 years. I met her the day after she turned 18 when I was playing college tennis in Utah. I was 22, and I see this lady in a group of people off at a college party that she shouldn't have been at. And I walk over, and I had liquid courage.
Yes, exactly.
And so let me back up even further. Is kind of funny story. At the time, there was a party, kind of a large room area where you could reserve for parties and various functions and all sorts of stuff. So we had a couple of friends from the tennis world that were having a party at this place in Ogden, Utah.
Ogden, Utah,
home of Weber State University. And so my friends and I go, hey, let's go to the party. It was about midnight, and there was a small cover charge to get in, and we walk up and said, hey, we just want to check out, see who's in there, what's going on. And they go, it's $5. And we go, no, come on, $5. And we're like, no, we're just going to walk in, walk out, and they go, no, $5. So we walked around the outside of the building, and the men's bathroom window was open. We jumped in the window and, and then walked in. I was looking around, and I see this blonde that was fairly shapely talking to a couple of guys. And I thought, liquid courage does a lot of interesting things. So I walked up, and when Cindy turned around, I go, hi, how are you doing? Just like we're looking at each other. She goes, oh, I'm doing fine. And I said, hey, would you like to dance? And so she's like, well, yeah, and why not? And So we started dancing, and she went to the bathroom for a second. She said, "Hey, excuse me just for a second." I said, "Okay." So I started dancing with another girl. Cindy comes back, and she kind of looks at me, and I just left this girl on the dance floor and started, off with Cindy.
Thought she was leaving you?
Yes, yeah, exactly. I thought, hey, here's a good catch. I go, "How old are you?" And she goes, "I'm 18." I was like, "Okay, great." I was like, I go, when was your birthday?" She goes, "Yesterday." And I was like, so if she would have met me, or I would have met her on her 17th, when she was 17, I wouldn't have, I thought that's a little, because I was in college already, and I was 22. I thought 22 and 18, that's okay. But 17, I thought that might be just kind of rocking the boat a little too much. But anyway, so fast forward, we're at this party. We're still dancing, doing some stuff. My friends, I drove them there, and I had a Chevette. Man, I thought I was living large. It was a poor man's Corvette. It was an awesome little car that I drove just into the ground. They go, "Hey, we want to go." A couple of teammates, and I said, "Here's the keys. I want to get a ride with them."
Okay.
And she had a couple of friends there. Cindy did at the time, and they go, "Yeah, we'll give you a ride home," because I knew where they were going, because they were heading south to Layton, which is about 10 miles south of where I lived. So I knew they were going to be going down Harrison Boulevard in Ogden, if anybody knows. And I lived on 27th Street, and I go, "Hey, can you guys take me home?" And they go, "Yeah." And Cindy's like, "No, we're not going to take you home. What do you mean?" And so she was giving me, she couldn't believe that I asked that question. So it gets better. The story even gets better. And I'll eventually get to the family, but because so they took me home and dropped me off, and I said goodnight, and with her friends, they went on, and so I said, "Hey, before we left." She left. I go, "Would you want to go out and maybe go to a movie or something like that?" And she goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Here's my number, but don't call me for a couple of days." I'm like, "What?" I go, "Geez." And so
pretty rough.
Yes. And so I called her, and I go, "Hey, do you want to come over to our place, or get together?" And she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, where'd you live?" And I told her the address, and we were having practice that day. So I asked the coach if I could leave a little early. And he goes, "Yeah, that's fine." And so I was sitting, like we're sitting here, and I was sitting there going, "Okay, I wonder where Cindy's at." Well, she was down 2 houses down, wondering where I was at.
Oh, really?
And I was like, "Where is it? Where is she?"
Right.
Yeah, it was funny.
That's before cell phones, right?
Before cell phones, way before. This is 82,
Yes.
82, because we got married in 83.
Wow.
And so I called her up the next day. I go, "Hey, where were you?" And she goes, "Well, where were you?" And I go, I was sitting we were in the basement. We rented out the bottom floor of a house that a couple leased out to 3 guys on the tennis team. And I go, "I was down in the basement. What do you think?" And I told her my address. She goes, "Oh my gosh, I forgot that she goes, I was going off memory." And so I said, "Okay, let's go. You want to go out Saturday, to the movie?" And she goes, "Yeah, that's fine." And so I said, "But the one thing is, my car wouldn't start." I go, the Chevette, it was on its last leg, basically. I go, "Can you drive?" And she's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe."
You're killing it right now.
Yeah, man, I'm really, getting in good here. And so she drives up, whatever time, say it's 6 o'clock on that Saturday night. And I walked out, and she goes, "You know what? I knew I was going to marry you right then." And I was like, "No kidding, really?" She goes, "Yes." And, with a month after that, I asked her to marry me.
Oh, wow.
And we've been together, since 1982.
Wow.
And we got married a year later. So 82, I was heading back to Oklahoma City, and this was probably May. And I didn't want to lose out on the opportunity. She was engaged to 2 other guys. So kid you not. Yeah.
But you've run, man. I would have ran in the long.
Yeah, and I had to knock off the competition, a little bit.
She did good. I know that for a fact.
Well, I had to call one of her former fiancés and say, "Hey, lay off," But,
yeah, exactly.
That this is my turf now.
Exactly.
So fast forward, we have 4 kids.
Yeah.
When you ask about the family, we have Ashton. She was born in 1988. Christopher. It was born in 1990. We have Andrea, born in 1998, and we have Allison, who was born in 2001. So we have 4 kids.
That's great.
They're all, great kids. Been all college graduates.
Yes.
Ashton lives in Charlotte, North Carolina at the moment. Chris lives down in Houston. Andrea and Allison are up in northern Utah, and Logan up around Utah State. So they are just finishing up. Andrea got married last year, and then Allison is probably going to finish up next year, I think. So, yeah, but all of her family lives up in Utah still, and my family, the rest of my family is just kind of scattered out. My sister lives in Albuquerque, brother lives in Nashville, and so, you know.
Midwest kids like you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I grew up in Oklahoma, and, you know, I wanted to see a different part of the world. I could have stayed and played tennis in Oklahoma after junior college for a couple of years. And the coach saw a friend of mine who I'm still friends to this day with from Tucson. He was at a different junior college, and I was at a different junior college, and we went and played at a national junior college tournament in Ocala, Florida. Typically, it was held at that time in the Ocala, Florida area at Central Florida Community College. So the coach was there and said, "Hey, you want to come up and play tennis?" I played a match that I lost, but it was the best match I ever lost because it turned into a couple of scholarship opportunities. I played the #1 seed and lost to him 7-6 in the third. It was 7-6, 5-7, 7-6. It was a 3-hour knockout fest in Orlando, or excuse me, Ocala, Florida, at the end of May, which was like humidity capital of the world. And I remember I had about 6 shirts laying out on the fence. I was like,
cotton shirts, man.
Oh my God! Yes, they were Lacoste. Those ones with the tail on them too. So, but that's how I got to Utah, believe it or not. So the coach said, "Hey, would you want you know, come up and play tennis at Weber State?" And I was like, I go, "What?" I go, "Utah?" And so he offered this other guy that I met from Tucson, a guy named Eric Sturmo, that's in Tucson. He said, "Hey, I'm going to offer him a scholarship too." And so I started talking like we're talking. I liked Eric, and I called him up a couple of weeks later. I go, "Where are you going to go to school?" And he goes, "I don't know. Where are you going to school?" And I go, "Hey, well, you got a scholarship, and I got a scholarship. Why don't we go up to Ogden?" He goes, "Okay." And then, you know, we only had a brochure. There was no internet. There was nothing. And so basically, by happenstance, you know, I got up to Ogden, Utah, out of this best loss I've ever experienced in Ocala, Florida. Kind of a circuitous route, you know, but you know, it's been great going up there, and it really. You know, the family that I have is a result of, you know, just playing college tennis or working around tennis facilities. And, you know, now we're going to have pickleball and going on. So there's a lot of, you know, great things that, you know, the amenities that are offered between, you know, tennis and pickleball, and the way you meet people, you know, just a great opportunity. So I've been blessed. So.
Yeah, it's that's kind of leading into some of your awards. I know you've got numerous, but I would say, which one would you say that you feel is the best thus far of the award as a recipient?
That's a good question. You know, obviously being married, that's a great award right there, and having kids. But, you know, from a professional standpoint, you know, I'm going to say becoming a master professional from the USPTA. That was the one I worked hard over the years, saved a lot of information. It took me about 2 years to really compile all that information and put that together. I know that's really not an award, but it is kind of, in my mind, to be able to say I'm a master pro. There's only about 180 of us, maybe 190 of us, that it's less than 200 that have ever been in the history of USPTA. So I'm in some pretty good company up there with you know, the likes of a Nick Bollettieri, Vic Braden, you know, people like that are big in the tennis world that, you know, some of the listeners may never have heard of. But they were just legendary. George Basho, people that I kind of grew up knowing who they were, and I thought, man, these guys, if I can be just a tenth as good as these people, then. But you know, you look back, you know, the history of what I've done, and started doing this professionally since about 1984, almost 40 years. It was a great look back in 2013 when I got the USPTA Master Certification. It took me a couple of years before that, and I started compiling this information just here and there, not necessarily put it all together at one time, but it was a couple hours here, a couple hours there, and then finally I looked at it and I was like, wow, I think I can do this, and I've got enough. Oddly enough, I needed some more playing credentials, because I never really played for a ranking. I never really played many USTA type events or the circuit. You know, I went straight to work pretty much right after college, and I played one summer circuit in 1982, right after I asked Cindy to marry me, and I realized financial instability wasn't that great. So 3 months of that, I just went, I'm not going to be a professional style player. Maybe, I really wanted to be a college tennis coach. And that's why I was starting out to be, but it never really materialized. But when I look back and then fast forward, basically, 25, 30 years of professional, coaching and teaching at a club level, to put all that information together and go, okay, hey, I did this, this, and this, and then this, and I'm like, wow, okay, I did a lot of stuff. Well, that book was about that thick when I put it together. To be able to make a CD and then send all that information. So that's why I say that's probably my greatest achievement and accomplishment, even though, I've been lucky to be in the RBC Hall of Fame over at T-Bar-M.
Saw that.
That was nice of those folks to do that. Was definitely an honor to be considered, by your peers to be in something like that I've made a difference around, this community. I've tried to help other people out. A lot of people help me get to where I'm at, and so I felt like it was my obligation to help people out where I could help them out. So it wasn't, I'm a product of a lot of different people. I'm not, this isn't all Craig Bell and what got me the awards, but it's been a great run and a great opportunity here in the Dallas community to be around so many people such as yourself, to meet you in '98 and to have you as a friend and just have so many people who are like-minded in our world of teaching here in the Dallas area. That the community is really great here. So it's that's I know kind of a long answer for
it's good. It segues into the U.S. What's the pickleball? Clarify the pickleball version of the arm of the USPTA?
That's a great question. I happen to serve on the USPTA Executive Committee, which is kind of a national governing body for the different divisions. USTA, the tennis is broken up into, the United States Tennis Association calls their 17 areas sections. USPTA, United States Professional Tennis Association, the teachers call ours divisions. So there's a little separation, 17 divisions. And pickleball has come on the scene in my recent memory about the last 10 years. And to be able to see what this boom is coming, I call it the pickleball boom. Basically, it's like the tennis boom. When I grew up in the 70s, I saw the tennis boom in action. I was a part of it. And to be able to see this from the pickleball boom, it's almost kind of like the same feeling how this thing is moving. I just had somebody or a team at the club. I shouldn't say somebody. Somebody's were putting together a pickleball team for TCD, which is our local organization. They were just playing. They were practicing inside to play for the fall. So the pickleball, the way that pickleball spreads itself out through the USPTA, we have a teaching association. The arm of pickleball, part of the tennis association, is we're now certifying professionals through the IPTPA. I have to sit there and kind of think about.
I'm next to come with you to this arm, and I will probably record that.
Right.
I'm going to come to that next. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so I think there are several out there in the community who wonder why we want to associate with pickleball, but we are the Professional Tennis Association. But really, we're kind of racket sports in general.
Yes.
It's a bigger, area. We do platform tennis. Wow. We also certify paddle or padel, however you want to say it. I don't know how you say it. I guess if you're
we can spell it.
Right, PADEL. The pickleball world has definitely caught the attention, the imagination of a lot of people out there. And fastest growing sport, racket sport, maybe sport just in general in the U.S., maybe worldwide. But it's gaining attention, so thus we're talking about it. We're here, we're here on the Pickleball Show, talking about pickleball because that idea, that thought process, the pickleball boom has been, going on for, I know it started in the 60s, but really in my consciousness, maybe 10 years, so.
It's funny because I got my IPTPA, got it.
IPTPA, yeah, that's right, yeah.
I got my certification at your club.
Right.
And I remember going there, and because I was offered it by Jeff Hedges, who's director at Big Canoe out there in Georgia, good friend of ours. Mm-hmm. He said, hey, you want to do this pickleball thing? And I'm like, yeah. Why not? Why not?
Why not?
He goes, you really want to do it? I'm like, well, yeah. Why does anyone else want to do it? He goes, I don't know. I don't know. I was like, I'll do it. And then I find out it's at Craig's place. And I'm like, it's got to be something legit, because this is obviously a testament to you, as always. It does awesome things. I'm like, if Craig's going to do it, it's got to be doing something. Let's go check it out. So we call Pat Fitzgerald. Some of the guys, we go up there, we start playing. This is a blast. But I can't stop moving because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So anyway, I got my Teach the Teacher certification in 2019.
Yes. Yeah, we had Seymour Rifkin.
Yes, sir.
Came in and provided the workshop.
Yes, he was great.
Did a really nice job. And, I was like, wow, this is, I think there were probably 25 or 30
yes, with those 4
professionals,
courts.
yes,
we were like,
that were
full.
part of the certification. I was like, wow, that is really something to think there are that many people, even just 3 or 4 years ago,
yes,
that were interested in certifying and seeing what was going on.
Yes.
Now maybe twice as many.
Again, this is something that this show is I've been fighting for it forever, and I've been fighting just for pickleball. We did your class, and that was the first pickleball certification class, I believe, in Dallas. I think
Could be.
I think it was. This is the first pickleball podcast or show in Dallas.
That's right.
Probably state of Texas. But my point is,
Probably so.
you started it, and I'll never forget that. And ever since then, I've been just infatuated with how we play and how it's changing, it evolves so fast. But that was 2019. So then I upgraded to certification level 1 with Matt Lazarine, who's still their master pro, and I got to level 2, which is pretty difficult. And anyway, it's kind of taken it from that one class from 3.5 years ago.
You can thank Dave Redding, our buddy from
Yes,
Northwood. He was the initial tennis professional to embrace pickleball.
He's in Arkansas right now.
That's correct. He's back up in Searcy, Arkansas.
Wow.
He still plays pickleball.
I know.
He still plays pretty good. Yeah, I played a tournament or 2 with Coach Dave. I call him Coach Dave.
There you go.
And he was, I remember him calling me up after our tennis organization sponsored the Guinness Book of World Records up at Fieldhouse USA in Frisco. There was a group of about 600 or 700 ladies on 30-something courts playing pickleball at one time. That was about 10 years ago.
That was him. That's right. I remember hearing about that.
Okay. And then, so David calls me up afterwards, because I attended that event, just to see what was going on. And John Ingram and I went up there. I remember we were another one of our pro friends. So Dave calls me up a couple of months later and goes, hey, Craig, let's go play pickleball. I'm like, pickleball? Dave, I go, whoa, come on. What are you talking? Are you talking about that game that they played up at Fieldhouse USA? A bunch of ladies up there, setting the Guinness Book.
Named after a dog, which is not.
And he goes, it's really fun. And I'm like, okay. And it was over in Richardson, and there was a church. I remember driving over there one Monday night, and I was like, what am I doing? I'm like, it was in their gymnasium, and there were 3 courts set up.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, how do I fit into this thing? What am I doing here? Yes. And I was kind of like, this is kind of interesting. It was 10 years ago. And that's where I met Dom Greco.
Wow.
And Charlotte Rivera, people who are big in the Dallas, North Texas pickleball community. I met Pops, Dom's dad, and I thought, this is kind of fun. And I called my sister. I talked to my sister quite a bit. She goes, what are you doing, playing pickleball? She goes, it's got to be beanbag bowling. I'm like, beanbag bowling? I go, yeah. She goes, pickleball. And I was like, okay. Yeah. I go, it's really kind of fun. I think this thing has a little something. I go, there's about 6 or 7 quirky rules that you have to kind of know, but I go, it was fun. And that's all I really took it as. I thought, okay, this is kind of fun. And David eventually started sponsoring that group at his club on a Monday night, and I would do the next Monday night. So we do kind of every other Monday night. There for, I'd say, about a year or 2. And then Dave moved, and then we kind of moved on to some other things. And but David was really the inspiration in getting this thing going. And I remember asking him one time, I go, Dave, why'd you start playing pickleball? I mean, pickleball. And he's like, well, he figured early on there weren't that many people playing. He goes, I might be able to get #1 ranking in the U.S. in 50 and 0. And I was like, that's good. I go, I get it. And fast forward, this Dave Fleming, who we know, Dave Fleming, around here, Super Dave, I call him Super Dave. I had an unfortunate prostate incident. I wouldn't say I didn't have cancer. I just had the small appetizer. Dave Fleming, we met, maybe 5 years ago. And about 4 years ago, he goes, hey, do you want to do this? My dad, unfortunately, passed away from, prostate cancer, and I know you have had a prostate issue. Would you want to do a prostate event at your club? And I said, yeah, let's do it. So we had 16 courts of pickleball on 4 indoor.
That's so much fun.
We had about 140 people there.
That's so awesome. What year was this again?
Yeah, it was 2018.
Golly.
And we had Tyson McGuffin, the #1 player in the world.
He's there now, right?
Right.
I gotta get him on their show, right?
You get Tyson on there. I remember standing in.
Coming for you, Tyson.
That's right, T-Mac. You're going to get him. He was standing in the doorway over by Court 3, in Court 3, and I go, hey, Tyson, I don't do this normally. I go, could I get a picture with you?
What?
I did. Because normally I don't ask for autographs.
CV1.
I did. I go, because I've never met somebody who's #1 at anything in the world.
Wow.
You're the #1 player in the world at the time.
Yeah.
I go, I just thought that was kind of interesting and intriguing to me. I still have the pictures in my phone, but I go, this is the only time I've really ever taken, a picture with anybody or asked for an autograph. I'm just not
that. I'll come back.
I've got it in here. It's still here.
Okay, I should have known better. We'll look at that.
Well, I've got like 20,000 pictures in my phone.
I believe that.
Because I snap pictures all the time, and I haven't deleted them. But Tyson is an incredible athlete. He's a former tennis guy that's moved over, and through some various, Tex-Mex productions, live streaming, things like that, I've met a lot of the pickleball people just from that initial Dave Redding calling me and going, hey, let's play pickleball. And, certification, getting involved now at Bent Tree. We have 3 dedicated pickleball courts outside that are lit. You've been over there seeing them. We also have, I don't have the lines painted on the tennis courts. I have little Sharpie marks out on the courts.
Yes.
And I know where those marks are, so I just tape them up and pull tape, and it takes me about 5-10 minutes, and we're ready to go. So that's where inside today, Barbara, who's actually one of my pros, is a professional pickleball player.
That's so awesome.
She goes, this is really fun. Would you mind if I try this? And so now, she didn't get the golden ticket, but she was over in Alabama a couple of weeks ago. They got the silver. Wow. And so which means the golden ticket into Margaritaville in November.
That one that was just played?
It's going to be in November. It's coming forward. So she that's where they play at the Indian Wells Tennis Garden. It becomes the Indian Wells Pickleball Garden in November timeframe. There'll be about 3,000 players, maybe more. It's amazing. Now, and
this is in New York, that we said?
This is in Palm Springs.
Palm Springs.
Indian Wells at Larry Ellison's.
Yes.
Yeah, the tennis garden, because they play the tennis tournament there in March.
Okay.
And so I think he figured out, like, hey, I'm not doing anything with this facility.
Let's do it.
Let's have some people. Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville sponsors a lot of senior type things. So this is mainly kind of a senior event, but there are over 3,000 players that play in this event in November in Indian Wells or Palm Springs area. Okay. Because we've had Byron Frezzo, Lord Byron, who's the pickleball head referee for the USAPA on our podcast. I was talking to him. I said, Byron, I go, if the governor were taken off the pickleball world and everybody could go to it and didn't have to qualify, I go, how many people do you think would show up in Indian Wells? This is a couple of years ago, and he goes, probably over 5,000. I'm like, 5,000 people playing pickleball. I go, you kidding me? He goes, no. He goes, we just don't have enough space. Wow. He goes, we do not have enough space in order to facilitate all the entries that want to come.
So that dam's been building, and it broke. I figured it.
And so I started thinking about that, and I was like, that's unbelievable. So that henceforth, we've had Ken Herman on our podcast, APP. Okay. We've had Jean Ann Stasny, who did the Texas Open. Okay. And then now this Sunday night, actually, we have June 19th, we have Melissa McCurley, who's the mastermind of how all the courts get scheduled. Wow. Because I met her at the Texas Open in 2018, Jean Ann Stasny, who's a great lady from pickleball, who I met basically around with Dave Redding and all this group, Dom Greco, Charlotte Rivera. Yes. She put on these 3 Texas Opens here in the area in September. Yep. So Melissa was coming around and she basically has a Winnebago and drives around to all these tournaments and directs these events. Puts on the courts and court assignments, and it's a complex task. And so I was talking to Melissa. I wanted to meet her, and because I needed to get some background information when we were doing the live stream. We actually live streamed pickleball from the Texas Open out of Wagon Wheel, 2018.
June 19th.
Yes. Yes, and so we're having her on the show on June 19th, which is this Sunday. Okay. We're going to talk to her. I remember her saying, I go, how many matches are you going to do this weekend? 4 years ago at the Texas Open. She goes, 500. I'm like, 500 matches? She goes, I go, that's a lot. And she goes, no, that's not that big a deal. I'm like, really? I go, wait a minute, and you'll see where I'm going. I go, what's a bigger event? She goes, oh, Margaritaville out in Palm Springs, Indian Wells. I'm like, how many do you do? She goes, we'll do 500 a day for 10 days. I go, 5,000 matches? She goes, yeah, basically. I'm like, wow, can you imagine the mind and thinking about, you know, the organization and putting this thing together? I was really fascinated when I heard Melissa say 5,000 matches. I was like, so Byron Frezzo, the same thing, you know, 5,000 people. There's pickleball is, if people don't know about it, it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
We're
Bing, bada boom. Big, not deal, D-I-L.
Stop it.
Sorry, that's, you know, I have a goofy mind, so sorry, I digress.
Well, no, never digress. That was, you got me by the
deal.
We can cuss on this, by the way, but we won't.
What's that?
We can cuss on this thing, that's right.
Oh,
that's another podcast.
That's another podcast, yeah.
And our players do that, sorry.
No.
People do that.
It's a big deal.
So, I'm moving right on for the, what's your favorite thing that you like the most about pickleball?
Ooh, boy, that's great. That's a great question. You know, like tennis, pickleball is very, I like to use the word convivial. You know, it's very friendly. You know, that's a word I've been picking up the last year or so. That's from Rick Steves, the European Travel Guide.
Yes.
Shout out to Rick. So Rick, that's free product placement for you. If you've not heard Rick Steves, he's a European travel guy. He's great. He says convivial the last couple of years, so I picked up on that word. It's a very friendly environment. So friendly, conviviality at its finest. People in the pickleball world are kind of like in the tennis boom days. They're just happy to play with whomever.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about pickleball. There's not a lot of, I wouldn't say pretense about who you're playing with. If you're next up, hey, let's go play.
Yeah.
Because they stack the paddles, you know, at different various rec facilities, parks, and you just go out and play with whomever. The friendliness, the welcomeness, the ability to just play, just get out. I think that's the greatest aspect of pickleball, and that's why it is where it is today. I mean, obviously there's some great athletes. If you watch, you know, the APP, the PPA, the two rival factions that are going at it, you know, they're on the professional level, obviously, and they're obviously on the competitive side. But just in the rec side here in Dallas, just, you know, it's an interesting dynamic that. Like I said, friendliness, uniqueness, people, you know, okay, yeah, you want to win, but at the same time, it's like, okay, chicken and pickles, you know, you got, I mean, gosh, I mean, who would have thought, you know.
I heard that place is super competitive, the chicken and pickle.
The chicken and pickle, I was down there a couple of weeks ago. I just went down there, I wanted to see it.
I got to go see it.
Oh, it's an interesting place. The food is really good, believe it or not. And it's a big area, people playing pickleball, you know.
That's in Grand Prairie, right?
In Grand Prairie. This one's in Grand Prairie. There's one in Grapevine that's going to be opening up in the end of the year, maybe December, January. So I picked up on that as well. But pickleball is not a sport that's going away. Let's put it that way. I think so.
Well, okay. So next question would be, so we touched on the At the Net podcast, but I mean, do you want to give us a little summary of what you and Adrian do on your podcast weekly?
Yeah, we started this about 3 years ago. We're at 120 episodes right now. We were able to just have an idea. AJ and I like to talk, and we thought, hey, why not do something on a podcast? Because podcasters at that time were kind of frowned upon, kind of looked like, who are these people? You know, the radio people didn't think podcasting was that big a deal. It ended up, it's kind of flipped its role in the last 3 years. We knew that there's some interesting stories out there of people that don't get told a lot of times. That's what's great about live streaming as well, like Tex-Mex Productions. There's a lot of amateur events that go unnoticed. Now they're not, but there's a lot more ways to get content out there. And it's kind of really turned the television and radio world on its head, kind of upside down. So by Tex-Mex Productions starting us out through live streaming about 6 years ago, we came up with At the Net podcast. And it's actually Darian McBrayer. We were talking about Darian a little bit ago, and he's the one, we were sitting there trying to figure out a name for the podcast. He goes, what about At the Net? And we're like, hey, and so that means a lot of different things. It could be, pickleball, it could be tennis, it could be basketball, anything with a net, hockey.
Exactly. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, we thought about some different things it's mostly been a tennis and pickleball based podcast. The guests have been very interesting. I mean, I've find it fascinating. We'll go anywhere. Most of them, I'm going to say, go at least an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours and 45 minutes. I mean, it's in that range right there, because we just find interesting people. And we've had several former players. We've had Taylor Dent on. We've had Johan Creek. Those have been some very popular names, Roscoe Tanner. But we've also just had some regular people that they're just around here. We've had some manufacturers reps like Blair Descaray with Master Systems. Really interesting guy. From a court surfacing standpoint to he does a lot of pickleball and builds a lot of things. So we've had just like we were talking about Ken Herman with the Association of Pickleball Professionals, Byron Frezzo, Lord Byron, the referee that administers, justice out there on the pickleball court. Jean Ann Stasny, who started the Texas Open. Wow. I mean, this lady came up with just this idea.
She'll be on here. We'll get her on.
Oh, Jean Ann's great. You need to have her.
Okay.
And she's a pharmacist. By day, she's just a pharmacist, and then wanted to do a big event, and she created a big event.
Wow.
And ended up selling it to the PPA.
Oh.
And so the Texas Open now is run by a different organization. But here's a lady that's just a pharmacist and wanted to make a big event. Yep. And man, she made a huge event out of this idea. Wow. So we've had her on the show, and then we have Melissa McCurley on the At the Net podcast that we usually do on Sunday nights around 8 o'clock our time. Okay. And then you can always go back and look at all the different podcasts on Facebook or YouTube or all the different platforms out there. But it's been fun. Like I said, very unique guests. We've had one of the interesting ones we had was this little girl a couple of years ago was involved in all the Minnesota, Portland. Her name was Shelby Talcott. And I looked up her name, and she was a tennis player at the University of Iowa. But she was a reporter on the scene during all that summer of craziness of 2020. So I reached out to her, and she goes, "Yeah, I'll be on your podcast." And I was like, "Wow, no kidding." And so she had played professional tennis, but also she was a reporter for Fox News, out there as a correspondent. Wow. And so I don't know why I looked her name up, but I do the research on the podcast, and so I try to get different people. I don't get all tennis players. I don't try to get all coaches. Wide variety. It's anything that kind of touches in pickleball. Same thing. I don't want the same people on. I don't necessarily want players on. I want somebody who's running the back of the house, like Melissa. Somebody who's running the front of the house, like Ken. Somebody who's running a tournament. Somebody who's refereeing a tournament. I mean, those are all have different stories and different unique aspects of the world of pickleball.
So what is your favorite pickleball equipment? What brand?
What brand? Oh, okay. Wow. I was using Engage, but I'm not on their team anymore because I don't really play a lot. There's Diadem, the great Corbin Gabsky that's local. Shout out to Corbin.
Out next Friday.
Yeah, Corbin.
He's coming in studio.
You better be ready.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, Corby, he's a great kid.
He is.
I like him a lot. He's a hustler. Oh, yeah. I respect people who are out there. Here lately, I've seen Dink Star is out there. A guy named Khan. He has this paddle that's almost like an emery board. I don't not know how he got that particular tolerance passed by the USAPA. But Dink Star, and Diadem, Engage. I really haven't focused in on one brand in particular. I know I thought I at one time heard there were 120 brands of paddles out there, but I was reading somewhere there might be 300 now. Yeah. Everybody and their dog's got a pickleball paddle. But it's interesting to see where this will fall out. That's why I called this the pickleball boom. It was like the tennis boom back in the 70s where you weren't even born at that time.
74, come on.
That's when I started playing tennis. And so I went through the turnstile at that point in Oklahoma City, and I saw all this stuff happening. So it reminds me a lot of, this will all shake out in 10 or so years, and there'll probably be one group, and then there'll be a few companies that are out there. You can't sustain 300 pickleball paddle companies at this time. Now at this point, there are, but it'll probably narrow itself down to probably a couple of dozen eventually.
So what's your favorite pickleball shot?
Shot? Oh, okay. I like the lob. I love to toy with people. I love to.
The lob.
Because it's hard. It is hard to put an overhead away in pickleball. As you know. So I love to sit there and start flicking shots back up at people, and they're sitting there trying as hard as they can.
You did this on a tennis court too, by the way.
I just like flicking that shot up there and watching people suffer.
That smile right there. That's what he does whenever he gets.
They're suffering. They're just suffering. It's just pain and agony and just lobbing. I just like to put it where they can hit it too. I don't like to put it away where they can't hit it because I just want them to tire out, and then eventually I try to take over most of the time. That's the way I try to make it happen that way. But that's my favorite shot is probably the lob, just because I know you're probably thinking maybe it was the dink or the Ernie or the ATP. No. The lob. I want to go pop, pop, and they're just going They just keep hitting it and they can't put it away.
Well, did you mind coming back on at some point in time and just kind of go over stuff?
I'm literally 5 minutes away, so I can come on anytime you want. This is fun. I just like talking sports, talking with a good friend like Curtis Reese right there. It doesn't get any better.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And this guy is giving me more paddles when I needed them. Oh, but he still does. But anyway,
right.
Well, this concludes our program. And
that's it.
Really appreciate you having. Yeah.
Oh, I can still talk.
I mean, we got to save you for more.
Okay.
But we hope everybody has a nice weekend. And just remember, come on, let's pickle.
Coming through.